Take your podcast to the next level with Media 22. From top-tier equipment to custom sets and a dedicated producer, we'll make you sound like a pro. We specialize in audio and video podcasts, video editing, content distribution, and live streaming for creators and businesses. Visit media22llc.com today for your free consultation. Media 22, where excellence meets creativity. Big Brothers Big Sisters of Wisconsin, in partnership with NFL Inspire Change, is launching the Big Draft, a statewide campaign to recruit 700 new mentors for Wisconsin's youth. Supported by NFL players and Mark Murphy, president and CEO of the Green Bay Packers, our goal is to recruit 700 bigs statewide, including 100 in Dane County, from February to April. We need community champions to help spread the word and become mentors. Mentorship transforms lives, offering youth the support and opportunities they need to succeed. Join us and make a big difference. Looking for a fun way to make a difference? Be a part of Bowl for Kids' Sake, a peer-to-peer fundraising event where you and your team can raise money for a great cause. Whether you're a part of a company or a community group, you can join in on the fun by forming teams of 4 to 6 people. Set your fundraising goals and get ready to bowl. From April 3rd through the 17th, Big Brothers Big Sisters will be hosting celebratory, exciting bowling parties at local centers. It's a fantastic way to come together, have fun, and make a meaningful impact. Want to sign up a team, or perhaps your company wants to sponsor this event? Well, head over to bbbsmadison.org/events for all the details and to get involved. Bowl for Kids' Sake, fun, fundraising, and giving back. Don't miss out. This is the Big Difference Podcast, a podcast about empowering youth and strengthening communities through the transformative power of mentorship. I'm your host, Tracy Anderson, Community Partnerships Manager at Big Brothers Big Sisters of Dane County, and I'm excited to have an empowering conversation with some of our amazing guests today. So today we're talking to a former Big Brothers Big Sisters match. Former Big Sister Elizabeth Perrin and former Little Sister Reette Thorns are joining us today. Very excited about this, because this match is very close to my heart. I met these two at our national conference a couple years ago, and I heard their story, and I returned home immediately, and I signed up to become a big after I met them and heard their story. And I was crying out in the audience and everything. So I was like, I have to have them on the podcast, because I feel like your story is a true testament to the lasting impact of mentorship. So let's get started. Hello, you two. How are you, Reette? How are you, Elizabeth?
Good.
I'm great, thanks.
Good. Well, Elizabeth, I want to ask you first. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What first inspired you to get involved with Big Brothers Big Sisters and become a big?
Sure. So back in 2012, I decided to be a big. I was 19, and actually my mom had just passed away, and I was really looking for something to just give my life a little bit of meaning. And to be honest, I'd always loved working with kids, but as a college student, I couldn't always commit to something like an after school program or a really rigid schedule. So I found Big Brothers Big Sisters and decided to apply. And then I got matched with Reette in September of 2012.
Oh, nice. So how long was your match with Reette?
We were matched when she was 10, and then you technically graduate from the program at 18, but she's still a huge part of my life at 23.
I love that. I definitely want to get into that. So what would you say has been the most rewarding part of your experience as a mentor when you were in the program?
I know it's so cliche to say, but I get so much more out of this program than I'm sure she does, getting to be a mentor. But watching Reette grow into the woman she is today has been such a fun journey for me. And I'm actually, after this, booking my hotel for her college graduation ceremony, which is insane.
Don't make me cry.
Yeah, talk about it.
Okay, that's awesome. Okay. So I want to ask, but I think you just kind of touched on it a little bit. How has being a mentor impacted your life personally? You just said you watched her grow up. Now you're going to go to her college graduation ceremony. How has this impacted you?
It's interesting to see how it changed over the years. So when I first became a big, the biggest thing that I got of it was forced fun, if you will. So I was a college student. I studied all the time, and I wouldn't make time to, go bowling or go to a movie. But now that I had this little girl relying on me to do that, she brought a break and fun into my life. And then as she matured, I got to fill a different role and again get to see her start to progress through adulthood. And
Mhm.
that's a very different kind of reward.
Yeah, I love that because I mean, a lot of the potential bigs that I talk to now, I mean, that's what I kind of talk about too. Is like it it makes a difference, obviously, on the little, but it makes a huge difference on the big too, where it kind of teaches you how to pause in life, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
I always knew if I just said, "Oh, I'm going to take an hour away from the library to go to a movie," never. But if I have to
right.
pick her up and take her to a movie, I will pause and do that.
Yes. It makes you pause and be present, right?
Yes,
Like, come
absolutely.
on, like we're all busy, but you can take an hour to walk in the park, you
And it
know?
makes the rest of your day that much better too.
It does. It
Hmm.
does. Agreed. Well, Riette, I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself. It's so good to see you. I just, when I met you both, I just loved you both and always love to keep up with you guys. So, how was it for you having a big in your life?
For me, it was like I had something of my own. I grew up with a lot of siblings and a lot of cousins, and a lot of other kids who were in the foster care system. And I feel like you have a bunch of kids or you're living in a home where the family is technically not your own, you feel like you don't have anything. And being matched with Elizabeth prior to when a lot of that stuff started to happen, I got to keep that thing as my own. And I think even as a kid, that made it so much more important to me because there was a shift change that happened. It
Hmm.
became at my home, I'm loved. I know I'm loved. My mom loves me, but I get to go and leave the house for the day or a few hours and go bowling or go to Science Saturdays downtown in Madison or just do fun things and meet and get to see other people and hang out with Elizabeth. Oftentimes, when we could, we would just go to her house and play games, which I wanted to do all the time. It's where like my Monopoly fanatic started. And we would bake and we would just do so many fun things together that even though I was loved at home,
Hmm.
I wasn't getting there.
Right.
And then things changed and my home life changed, but Elizabeth was still there. She was still constant. She was still coming to pick me up. It was like that's something that nobody can take from me, even though everything else had been taken from me. So I think that's kind of also how I try to approach life. Like there are things in life that this is mine. Nobody can take this from me. This is what grounds me. This is what I call home. I think that this example, what Elizabeth has been in my life, is a constant reminder when I face anxiety and other sort of triumphs in life. I think about like, that transition of all of these bad things can happen and good things can happen, but this thing is still mine. This person, this thing still grounds me, and it's who I call home, and nobody gets to change that. And I think that that has changed me as a person, and maybe why I don't face myself with all of the trauma that's happened because I've seen an example of what it means to have somebody love you, and I feel like that's
Hmm.
enough. You
Hmm.
know, you can be sad about all of these other things or like, oh my God, my life didn't go the way it wanted it to. But there's something about the saying, all you need is one person to say yes. All you need is one person to love you. All you need is one person to push you. All you need is one person to be there and to never let you drown. So it's a big metaphor for like everything else that I take charge of in my life.
Yeah, can you touch on because honestly, when I first met you guys a couple years ago at the conference and you were up there speaking, I mean, you had me crying. And can you just touch on a little bit about your story and how it came to be that you did get a big sister?
Yeah, I think I was 10, and I like came home from school one day, and my mom was like, "Oh, we heard about this Big Sisters program. We're gonna sign you guys up." And I think it was Cody, who was originally working at Big Brothers Big Sisters, who came to my house and interviewed us and gave us a piece of paper to fill out. With this piece of paper, talking about all the things that I love and those sort of things. I think my mom's goal with this is that she knew that home life was rough, and she knew that we needed somebody, and she knew that things were getting bad for her. So she's like, I found this awesome program. I have a lot of kids. Let me put my kids into this program so that they have somebody to maybe fill the gap and fill the space that our home is facing. Actually, I didn't know this, but Elizabeth was not supposed to be matched with me.
Oh,
She
really?
was supposed to
What?
be matched with my sister.
Oh.
Oh,
And so my sister Sierra and Elizabeth had mirrored like applications. They were the same. Like to read books, kind of reserved, quiet, wish they were an only child or actually were an only child. And mine was like, I love to go bowling and I love to sing and I'm an extrovert. I love to make friends. Like just completely opposite of Elizabeth.
uh-huh.
And I don't know how. I don't know when the gods were on my side that day, but I got matched with Elizabeth.
Uh-huh.
Even though we were polar opposites. So I think that that's always a pretty cool piece of our story. And a lot of my siblings went through this program with Big Brothers Big Sisters, but unfortunately for them, but fortunately, me and Elizabeth always remained together.
Mm-hmm.
My siblings love Elizabeth. Um, my family loves Elizabeth. And yeah, she was there through all the transitions of my life, all the homes that I had lived in.
Mm,
And
yeah.
she always came to get me no matter what.
That's what I
And
remember most at the conference when you said that,
yeah.
that she just kept showing up.
Hmm.
I don't know if you had said something like she didn't know like places that you were going to be because you would switch,
Hmm.
but she would find out where you are and she would just
Hmm.
show up every week, and I just was a mess in the audience.
Yeah.
I really
Because
was.
it was a little hard because it's like there would be times where, like Elizabeth would drive 30 minutes to get me and I wouldn't be there. And we talked about it, and she's like, "Hey, like that's you have to communicate about those things." And at
Mm-hmm.
the time, it was frustrating because it was like I have no phone. And the times that I do have a phone, like I do something and I get my phone taken away, and then whoever I'm living with wouldn't communicate. Like those kind of things that would happen. And I was at one point was so scared that like I'm like this girl's never gonna come pick me up again. And but she kept showing up.
Yeah, wow.
Um,
That's
and it
great.
got better once I got in high school and I actually got a phone. But
Yeah.
there was a point where I'm like, oh my God, she's never gonna pick me up again. She kept showing up, like even in the
Hmm.
midst of dealing with a child who's moving from the east side to the west side and different homes, and so.
Yeah. That's a testament to Elizabeth. That I love that. That is amazing.
Mhm.
So, Riette, can we just talk about how you've grown? Okay, so let's set the scene because we didn't talk about the national conference.
No.
So, first of all, you auditioned for American Idol.
Hmm.
So you auditioned for that. Has it been 3 years now? 2 years?
It's been 2 years, I think.
Okay.
Two and a half.
So yes, they played that video clip. You auditioned. You hugged Lionel Richie.
Hmm.
Like it was a thing.
It was.
Pretty amazing. And then at national conference, it gets better because
Yes.
you spoke at the conference, but then also Wyclef was there
Hmm.
and you performed with Wyclef.
I did.
Oh my gosh. I was
I
like, I
know.
knew something was going to happen with your career, like once all this went down. So,
No, it was actually crazy. And I don't know if Elizabeth told you that, but in April I also opened for Lauren Elena, Mason Ramsey, and Julia Cole. So they came to my school and I opened and got to meet them. Lauren Elena was also on American Idol. And Mason Ramsey, like that little yodel kid that got super famous from
yeah.
Walmart. Like I don't
Hmm.
know, like I'm just out here doing Quest, I guess. Like I'm just out here trying to find the next big thing.
Yeah. So amazing. So, I'm curious to ask you both, and obviously, like, I think, and we'll talk about this too. I think you having a big in your life really impacted all these things that you're doing right now. But I'm curious to ask you guys because it's been like several years you've been out of the program, but you guys still see each other. How often do you guys see each other?
Well, the college student lives 5 hours from me now, so that
Oh,
impacts it a
wow.
little
Yeah.
bit. But I've been lucky enough that she's lived at home with me a couple summers, which has been awesome. And then we try to get her home for as many family holidays as her schedule will permit. And I was telling Tracy a bit ago, but we were able to, she was in town like last week, and we surprised all my nieces and brought her home for dinner. And there
Yeah.
were tears and lots of big
Aw,
feelings,
I love
which is
it.
not the reaction that we get when I walk in. So we try to see her as much as we possibly can, and if not, there's FaceTime and all those other great tools.
Yeah.
And I love that whenever you guys see each other, and Elizabeth, you talk about when you're family. I mean, basically, she's a part of the family. I mean,
Oh,
she
if I
spends
walk into a
holidays.
family gathering, the first
Yeah.
question is, "Where's Riette?" I'm like, "Hey guys, I'm
Oh,
here too."
hi.
But good to know. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
I do preemptively if I need a favor from my dad, I always ask, "Can I have blah 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 for my favorite daughter?" And he goes, "Oh, anything for Riette." So I honestly just use her name a lot.
That's
Yeah, that's
awesome.
always his response, which feels really good, you know.
So, so how do you guys think that you've maintained your relationship after all these years, even though you've graduated from the program?
Honestly, I feel like it's very easy because it's like when I graduated from the program, we were almost 8 years in anyways. So it had just been so long. Like it was so, it had already been like second nature. I think once I turned 18, I was like partially staying with Elizabeth.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Like once I turned 18, I was partially staying, like I was still in my senior year, so sometimes I would stay at Patrick and Kelly's, but sometimes I would stay at Elizabeth's and she would take me to school. A lot on the weekends. I was spending a lot of weekends in the later end of my senior year, right before COVID. And then once COVID definitely happened, like I was just there. So I think it was just like it wasn't like comfortable and steady because we had crazy lives, you know, like Elizabeth is a scientist, like let's talk about that. Elizabeth
Oh
is a
wow.
literal scientist.
Wow.
Okay, so when I think of like scientists, I'm like, oh my god, Bill Nye the science guy. But like Elizabeth is that in my life. Like I'm living with like a child heirloom. So, you know, like
Yeah.
it was second nature for me. And I
Right.
just like I don't know what I was doing. I was just a kid, man. I don't know what I was doing. Like I was just existing. Elizabeth was making me these sandwiches with hummus on it, and I was like, "Ooh, I'm not going home. You got me." Like seriously, that's always like
Yeah.
she would bring me a sandwich with some hummus on it, and I'm like
Changed your
revolutionary,
life. Yes, changed your life.
and I
Introduced you
never
to
left.
things. So, like,
So
why do you both think you've decided to maintain the relationship? Like, why is it important to you both to maintain it?
I mean, truly, she is family.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's never been a question of, oh, is this a commitment I want to continue to make any more than it would be with a cousin or a sibling of mine or a parent of mine. So I think that's a big part of it. And then also knowing that it doesn't have to look the same in every stage of life, right? Like this past semester, between her work and her class schedule and whatever, I knew she probably had the bandwidth for a text here or there and probably not a 2 hour FaceTime chat. And maybe if she's home for a holiday, we can spend a day together. So just knowing that, again, the permission that where we are in our lives, it doesn't have to look the same was a big part of that for me.
Yeah. That's wonderful. I mean, the minimum commitment is 1 year now. Like I don't know what it was, Elizabeth, when you guys were in it, but now it's a minimum commitment
I believe
to be
ours
a
is either one
mentor.
or 2. Hmm.
Yeah, and it's just so nice to hear these stories because again, we hope for this, right? We hope for lifelong matches. So I'm curious to ask you both, why do you think mentorship is so important for today's youth?
For me, I think a lot of it is exposure and normalization. So what I mean by that is Riet mentioned that I'm a scientist. And I think if you grow up where the adults around you maybe don't have a profession like that or just don't have some of those life experiences, it can seem so unattainable. And when instead I can go, you're right, I am. And I'm also the one that you watch trip and fall down the stairs this morning. Like, you know,
Yeah.
uh, and my favorite music is hip hop and all that kind of stuff. And I think it can really help normalize that. Of course, this is just something, if you want it to be your future, it can be, or just understand that anything you're dreaming of, totally possible. So that was a big part of it for me, was just saying we might come from different backgrounds, but it doesn't mean our trajectories have to look different.
Yeah, Ria, what do you think?
I agree. I think that having a mentor made things feel possible, especially like when it's things that don't matter in your life. Like, for example, like that's how people get hooked on reading and drawing and doing all these different things. It's like they've maybe seen their parents or someone do it and they're like, ooh, like I want to do that. That type of exposure that Elizabeth is talking about, I think I used in my very own relationship with her. Um, I didn't give two rats about school. I wasn't taught to. My grades weren't being checked. And when I was going to school, I was just hoping that I knew I was going to eat 2, 3 meals, and I knew I wasn't going to have to think about whatever I was going through at home. So I think that having a mentor teaches you all of those gaps in your life that maybe you have. And I know for me, a big one was school. And Elizabeth was, she wasn't like, you need to care about this, you need to do this, you need to do that. She's just like, this is what I do. This is how I got the grades that I did, or this is how I got into W Madison. This is how I approach chemistry or math or history question. So I think part of mentoring is the ability to teach, but not just teach somebody how you would do it, but teach them how to where they can understand it and however that looks for them. And then part of being mentored is accepting and applying that to your own life because you still have to do that work. Some kids just need the option to be able to do that work. Some people just need the knowledge to be able to do that work. That's how mentoring, I think, can change lives. Like you just have to change the trajectory in which you look at the situation. And part of mentoring is the kid actually accepting and applying the things that you're teaching them to their life.
Do you feel like too it changes things once a mentor is introduced in their life because then they're seeing an entirely different world that maybe they didn't know existed?
I had never heard of a science Saturday before I
Yeah.
met Elizabeth, and that they were teaching me cool things. When I got back to school, I was like, what are y'all doing up in here? Because on Saturday, they're teaching me how to turn things blue and red. I'm coming up in here and y'all talking about photosynthesis. So I think that once you're being handed what feels like a new life, a new set of skills, a new way to think and observe and listen and talk and
Mm,
feel is
yeah.
things that will really change the youth. And I know I needed it back then and I didn't even know it. So I know they need it. I know this future generation needs it.
Yes. Yes, they do.
So I think, yeah, I think it's all about accepting it too.
So this is a great segue into what qualities do you think make a good mentor? So I'm curious to know what you both think about that. So what qualities do you think make a good mentor?
I know for me, I've reflected on it, and Briette touched on this a bit, but the try to not be preachy and just show. So that was my biggest thing was I would say, I liked school and here's some of the things that got me, but there's no point in me sitting here and lecturing you about this has to be important to you. You have to prioritize things the way I did. What matters to me has to matter to you. And then also really separating if somebody has a different background from you, it's just different. It's not less than. Because I know there were a lot of things Riette had seen that I had never. And really learning to separate, okay, she has a different upbringing and that's all it is different was something that I had to really reframe for me.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely feel you on the preachy thing. I
Hmm.
think it's real easy as a mentor, like taking on that role because I even become like really conscious of that. Like you want to be there for the little, but not being so preachy, letting them open up to you, like letting them,
Yeah.
that's really important. So, Ria, what do you think?
I think that what makes a good mentor is learning from them too, which I think, like learning from the person you're mentoring, which I think Elizabeth does wonderfully, like listening, even if it's stuff that you already know, but just listening and trying your best to like be there for them and whatever they need, whether it's like a listening ear, a sandwich with an orange after practice, help with chemistry. I lucked out with having a scientist, but helping
Yeah,
in
you
any
did.
way that you can. Um, yeah, because if I was a mentor right now and they came to me with chemistry, we just gonna have to get you a tutor because I can't help you with that.
Yes.
But just being able to be available, I think that that was like the biggest thing is that, like I said, she always came back.
Mm,
She was always there, even if she was busy and it could wait 24 hours or a week. She was still always there. She still always came back. So just being available. That doesn't mean at every instant, but that, just overall, just letting the person that you're mentoring know that you're there.
yeah. So, Elizabeth, I have a question for you.
Hmm.
How did you build trust with Ria? Because, a lot of times when people first become matched and you're dealing with a kid, right? And especially in Riette's situation, I mean, she was going from home to home. I'm sure she didn't have a lot of trust for adults. So, how did you build that trust with her?
I think there were a couple of things. I mean, Riat talked about the consistency. So we ended up, our strategy, I figured out that she could be in a million different places, but usually she was at church until a certain time on Sundays. So I just said, hey, I'm always going to show up there. I know that you don't always have access to a phone to get a hold of me. And there might be some days where I show up and you're not there or you can't come with me. But more times than not, the adults in her family went, oh, yeah, that's fine. So we had that consistent of no matter what, unless I'm, and I will let you know ahead of time, I'm out of town or something, I will be there. That was number one. And then really acknowledging that I'm going to show you why I'm weird and different too. Because I think that was a hang up for me initially was, I'm pretty nerdy. I'm not the most fashionable. Things like that. And just saying, this is me. And I
Hmm.
get that some of it might be things I used to be embarrassed about. So just being honest with who I really was, I think was a big part of that.
Hmm.
And being honest with my own struggles too. Like, oh, I also get very anxious about this thing, or I also have a really hard time when this comes up.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's what's so awesome with kids too. Is like you do feel like you can be yourself around kids.
Oh, yes. Probably
Like
sometimes too much. Riette would
yeah,
probably argue.
yeah, where they just. That's what I love about kids. It's just this innocence, before like the world kind of gets a hold of them and says, "Hey, you have to do things this way or that way." Just being free. So I have to ask you both, like, any advice you'd give to someone considering becoming a mentor but feeling like unsure or intimidated? Like, what would you say to them? Yep.
I would say that you could change someone's life by taking them bowling, taking them to see the ski shows in the summer on the water, taking them to science Saturdays and taking them sledding, things that are so inexpensive to us but mean the world to kids who maybe aren't experiencing that because they'll never get tired, they'll never get bored. Just
Yeah.
being just being with another kid and being somebody who they feel safe around and protected for a short amount of time, whether that's once a month, twice a month, it would change how they look at life, and maybe inspire themselves to go and be a mentor and want to do that for somebody else.
Yeah, Elizabeth, what do you think? Like, especially since you answered the call, right? I mean, if there's somebody kind of on the fence and unsure about
Yeah.
being a big, what do you think?
And I look back at it, and when I became a big, I was in one of my more challenging situations. One meaning the least economically stable I am relative to now, and had some life challenges. And so I would assume that almost any adult I'm talking to has the amount of time it would take to be a mentor, meaning roughly an hour a week. And if you have something you like to do and the ability to talk to a person, you already have everything in your arsenal that you need. And I think so often people wait until they think they might be ready. And I promise you, you have the skill set that you need to start.
Right. Because I hear that all the time.
Hmm.
Like, as outreach, people are like, I'm not ready yet. I'm not perfect. My life's a mess. And I'm like, you don't have to be perfect.
No,
You just
I,
have to
I
be
tell
present.
people that like the time I was matched with Reette, I tried very hard, but that was absolutely the worst version of me. And so that she got to see. Um,
Yeah.
so I promise that they have the skills and the time that they already need to start. And you'll cultivate more as you need them.
Right. So, Riette, how was having a mentor in your life? How did that build your confidence? Because look at you go. I mean, you're flourishing, girl. So, how did it build your confidence?
I don't know. Like, Elizabeth just gave me the space to be who I was. And I took an inch and went a mile. Like, I remember one day after school, me and like four of my friends came to Elizabeth's house and we were screaming. And I'm telling you, from Dreamgirls musical. And I mean, screaming this song. We were running around the house. Mind you, this is the house that Dad lives at right now.
Hmm.
So like Elizabeth's dad was, I don't know, I don't know if he was home. I hope not. But we didn't even care about that. We were running around this big house singing this musical. Elizabeth would make me CDs every time we had like a big milestone or like a birthday, and I could go home and these are like my favorite songs to sing in the car or anything like that. Like, she just let me run my mouth too much, talk about all this stuff. And I just think, like, every time I was with Elizabeth, like, when I was with my family, sometimes I'd be like, girl, shut up, please. But when I spent that 1 2 hours with Elizabeth, we would sing all the songs together. We would, I would just act a fool.
Hmm.
And then I would come back and I would act a fool again. And I don't know, I think maybe I would have lost that spark with the situations that I was dealing with, but Elizabeth just put so much like love and care into me that it allowed me to continue being who I am, even though she was nothing like that. Elizabeth was not running around the house singing an ASAP Rocky song. Elizabeth
Mm-hmm.
was not when I was home.
Oh, okay.
Elizabeth Elizabeth was not, super bouncing off the walls like I was, because she's in her mind. It's like, oh my god, I got another chemistry test to study for. Get this girl out of my house. But for me, it was not that. It was like, oh my god, I get to bounce off the walls for 2 hours. So I think just letting me, be who I am and never having to hide that or shield that or be, a lesser version because we have an extrovert and an introvert in a room together. I think that helped me build build a lot of confidence. And we also like went in public a lot and like, had to interact with other people and with other kids who were in the programs. Like a lot of the times we would go to the bowling alley and we would meet kids downtown when we did different things. So it was all, we were never just us two a lot. Like we did get out there and get, exposed to other kids and other matches. And I've always had a big mouth since I was a kid. So it was easy to maintain that. But I will say, the way I knew I could trust Elizabeth is because one day, well, maybe it's like one of the first times we hung out. She pulls up in this red Jeep. Love the red Jeep. It's like deep in my heart. I love this red Jeep. And she turned on the radio, and Nelly started playing. So I'm looking at this girl. I'm like, "What you know about Nelly?"
Was it Grills?
It wasn't. It was
Oh,
Cruise with Florida Georgia Line,
okay.
and it was the first song on the first CD that she ever made me. I wish I still had it. And I was like, "Ooh, I'm gonna see you next week again." Um, and I think that like slowly over time, Elizabeth's confidence and like the way that she claimed she was an introvert because she was an only child, but she was actually an extrovert the whole time and just needed another one to be like, "Girl, come on, break a piece of your shell off." And then one day I remember we just got in the car and we were both unhinged and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is exactly what I want." So I think, yeah, Elizabeth, seeing like parts of me in Elizabeth and parts of Elizabeth in me just like made it that much better. The confidence and the aura just radiating off of both of us. So I think that's also like a part of it. Like we didn't stay introvert and extrovert forever. Elizabeth listens to ASAP Rocky, ASAP Ferg, Nicki
You
Minaj,
harping
Meg
on
The
that.
Stallion. Like what?
What?
Like seriously. So I think that seeing Elizabeth grow too is a part of that confidence. So yeah, I think it's how both of you grow and how you see bits and pieces of each other in each other that just help that confidence.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll echo that. I was thinking about this last night in anticipation for the podcast. So my side job is I teach fitness, right? So I'm jumping around on a mic. I'll talk to anybody, and I always get described as very, very extroverted, very loud, all the things. And I that is my natural personality. And I look back at when Riette and I got matched. You would never describe me that way. You would say she's very quiet. She likes to stay at home. She doesn't really break out of her shell. And now, if you meet me in a room, like, I'm there. And she's a huge part of that because that is naturally me, but I had lost that part of myself. And I give a ton of credit to Riette for helping me find that.
I always say too, when I'm presenting, that I tell your story. You guys are in my presentations, and I always say, when I'm around you, it's magnetic. There is this bond. And I think you both bring up such a great point. I'm now just starting to realize you let each other be yourselves. The times I remember being around you guys just let each other be you. And I think that is the most important thing in any relationship, right? It gives people room
Absolutely.
to grow because they can be themselves. Well, in wrapping up this podcast episode, I want to ask you both, what are some ways that others in the community can make a big difference in the lives of youth through mentorship? Elizabeth, let's start with you.
Obviously, I'm, of course, going to say Big Brothers, Big Sisters. But
Mm-hmm.
honestly, even if you know an adult in your life who maybe is a single parent or can struggle to give all the children in their life individualized attention, is there a way that you could step in that role, as an aunt, if you will? Or is there a school program where you're matched with a kid once a week? But I think especially if you can find a child who maybe doesn't get a lot of individualized attention, and you can say, I'm going to consistently show up for you, even if it's in this one small way, even if it's I eat lunch with you once a week, and just know that you are their person. You are not there to see the entire group, you are there for them.
Okay, Riette, what are your thoughts?
Yes, obviously checking out Big Brothers, Big Sisters and seeing the ways in which you can be involved, but also talking to people and hearing about other people's stories and really asking the important questions of what it means and what the mission of this is. And then another part is for kind of like Elizabeth said, like, there's so many kids in this community. There's MSCR programs and different organizations, even with the youth that are at the Children's Hospital. There's so many different ways to connect with kids in the community of Madison and volunteering for mentorship that people can be a part of. And even that 1 hour a week or a month of your time will mean everything to somebody. You never know how it will impact anyone. So, yeah, there's tons of different programs. There's different things you can do, different ways you can contribute. But I would say for me, my number one choice would be Big Brothers, Big Sisters.
Yay. Good answer. Well, I want to thank you both for joining me today, Big Sister Elizabeth Perrin and former Little Sister Reette Thorns. Thanks for joining the podcast and sharing your story. Honestly, your match is a testament of lifelong relationships. You guys are wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Big Difference podcast, a podcast about empowering youth and strengthening communities through the transformative power of mentorship. I'm your host, Tracy Anderson, Community Partnerships Manager at Big Brothers Big Sisters of Dane County. And to learn more about Big Brothers Big Sisters, you can visit our website at bbbsmadison.org. That's bbbsmadison.org. It's all about making the big difference. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Looking for a fun way to make a difference? Be a part of Bowl for Kids' Sake, a peer-to-peer fundraising event where you and your team can raise money for a great cause. Whether you're a part of a company or a community group, you can join in on the fun by forming teams of 4 to 6 people. Set your fundraising goals and get ready to bowl. From April 3rd through the 17th, Big Brothers Big Sisters will be hosting celebratory, exciting bowling parties at local centers. It's a fantastic way to come together, have fun, and make a meaningful impact. Want to sign up a team, or perhaps your company wants to sponsor this event? Well, head over to bbbsmadison.org/events for all the details and to get involved. Bowl for Kids' Sake, fun, fundraising, and giving back. Don't miss out. Big Brothers Big Sisters of Wisconsin, in partnership with NFL Inspire Change, is launching the Big Draft, a statewide campaign to recruit 700 new mentors for Wisconsin's youth. Supported by NFL players and Mark Murphy, President and CEO of the Green Bay Packers, our goal is to recruit 700 bigs statewide, including 100 in Dane County, from February to April. We need community champions to help spread the word and become mentors. Mentorship transforms lives, offering youth the support and opportunities they need to succeed. Join us and make a big difference. Take your podcast to the next level with Media 22. From top-tier equipment to custom sets and a dedicated producer, we'll make you sound like a pro. We specialize in audio and video podcasts, video editing, content distribution, and live streaming for creators and businesses. Visit media22llc.com today for your free consultation. Media 22, where excellence meets creativity.